Giannis Antetokounmpo just broke basketball. After a slow start to the season, the Bucks are back, led by their 29-year-old superstar who just shattered the Milwaukee Bucks' single-game scoring record. But this wasn't just some other performance. After the former two-time NBA MVP and one-time Finals MVP broke Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's all-time franchise scoring record with a three-pointer in 2022, he fittingly broke Michael Redd's single-game scoring record for Milwaukee with 2 textbook free throws. And oh yeah, just the other night he passed up Kareem for the most rebounds in franchise history too.
But the Greek Freak had all of this planned. See, Monday night after the game against Chicago, Giannis went on saying that he might have to, quote, make something happen against Indiana on Wednesday night at home. And that's exactly what he came out and did. After that historic performance, the Bucks moved up to 17-7 on the season and are riding high. But believe it or not, even that 64-point performance might not have been the most significant thing that happened that night. I mean, things had already started getting a bit out of hand even during the game. These two teams had a bit of history already this season, and as the game wore on, so did the tension and the bad blood. But what happened post-game was absolutely filled with controversy and drama.
Even though the Pacers tried selling the fact that they took a reserve ball, not the actual game ball, they supposedly wanted to give the ball to their rookie who scored his first NBA points during the game. Well, actually not points, but point, without the S. The dude had 1 point. Yet they still tried taking the ball from one of the game's greatest players ever on a night he scored 64. Alright, well, all the NBA teams do have a tradition of giving the game ball to a rookie who scored their first NBA career point, but they also know that the home team gets first dibs on the game ball.
That's more of like a home team thing. For Indiana to take the ball, their road team, like that's where the problem lies. Like you don't get that right because you're the road team. The home team gets that ball.
Either way, no matter how the situation went, we have to understand that there were a ton of bad feelings throughout the game with that little scuffle we saw earlier. Also, the Pacers didn't exactly appreciate that Giannis was out there going for the record and padding his numbers with the game well in hand already. See, Pacers coach Rick Carlisle pulled his starters around the 6-minute mark, with the Pacers trailing by 16. But the Bucks starters stayed in, as Giannis was chasing not only his previous career high of 55 points, but also the Bucks franchise record of 57, which was long held by Michael Redd. Giannis hit 58 points for his career high and the Bucks record and left the game with a little under 3.5 minutes to go. At that point, the Bucks were up 19 points. So if the game played out normally the rest of the way, well, then we wouldn't really have an issue. But this is where things took another turn. Giannis actually subbed back into the game with around 2 minutes remaining, and the Bucks still had a double-digit lead. And Indiana didn't take too kindly to that. And speaking of not taking things too kindly, this is Giannis being restrained from going back into the Pacers' locker room after the game to get the real game ball that he felt Indiana took from him. Man, I'm glad someone got a hold of Giannis, or he would have gotten them big old paws on the entire Indiana team. In the end, though, Giannis did end up getting the ball, but he believes it wasn't the actual ball that was used in the game. And to make matters even more suspect, Giannis went as far as saying that he didn't even get the game ball after the epic 50-point Game 6 in the 2021 NBA Finals.
I don't know. I have the ball, but I don't know if it's a game ball. It doesn't feel like the game ball to me.
But wait, hold up. Why exactly am I even telling you all this? Well, it's to portray the biggest thing about Giannis Antetokounmpo, the one major thing that people still aren't truly noticing about him. And that's his obsessive passion for the game of basketball. See, we can argue all day and night about who was in the right and who was in the wrong that night, but that is besides the biggest point, because the internal drive Giannis has to reach new heights in his game is a forgotten gem in today's NBA. He's cut from that cloth. Whatever Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, and Larry Bird had inside them, Giannis has that too. And not only did Giannis directly say 2 days before the game that he's gonna make something happen, he came out and had probably his best regular season game ever. And because he has that burning passion inside of him, he also couldn't allow the other team to take the game ball away from him and ruin his moment. But the thing people aren't realizing is that Giannis didn't just recently become the guy with a burning desire to stand out from the crowd. It's been in his DNA for quite some time now. But here's how the story began. See, Giannis wasn't a lottery pick. He wasn't entering the NBA as a high draft pick, thinking he would take over the league in short order like Kobe, MJ, LeBron, guys who knew they had all the talent in the world to take over the league. The difference for Giannis was really simple. He didn't have that true American identity in him at the time, which gave him a bit of a different mindset. That's why he said years ago, quote, "Coming into the league, I never saw myself as one of the best players in the league or being that LeBron type of player. That's the truth. I could say, yes, I always thought I could be like LeBron James or better or whatever, but that's not the truth." But when Giannis started making all-star teams and all-NBA teams and began racking up the individual accolades, his mindset began to shift. He felt emboldened to do more. He took exception to the fact that people were doubting him, saying, quote, "A lot of people say that I can be the face of the league. I cannot be the face of the league because I'm not American. I don't have the American culture in me." That adrenaline built up inside of him. He wanted to do something bigger, to create a legacy. It's the reason why he asked the late Kobe Bryant for a challenge as a 22-year-old who didn't even have anything on his resume yet. That kind of focus was next level. While Giannis ended up capturing his MVP just 2 years later, the expectations of him began to change. Critics wanted to see more, and naysayers still argued that Giannis would never become the face of the NBA no matter what he did. After Giannis suffered back-to-back ugly postseason exits in 2019 and 2020, the criticism grew to an all-time high. They called Giannis overrated. They trashed him for airballing free throws. They said he was nothing more than a regular season player who would never win an NBA title. James Harden said he had no skill. But what truly defines greatness isn't what you do in a singular moment. Greatness is not defined by a list of achievements, stats, analytics, or even breaking records. Greatness is when you absorb the constant backlash and criticism, weather the storm, and produce the best version of yourself. What Giannis Antetokounmpo did 2.5 years ago at just 26 years old doesn't get talked about enough. When the world was at his throat for years, telling him what he can and can't do, winning an NBA title and NBA Finals MVP and playing the single greatest closeout NBA Finals game in NBA history wasn't just a crowning moment. It's a moment that encapsulates the storybook of doubt written about a young superstar and how he overcame literally every obstacle in his path to stand on the mountaintop. Most other players would have folded, would have tapped out, conceded their defeat. But if you are made of the stuff Giannis is made of, things are on a completely different scale. While Giannis didn't have this mentality early in his career, he cultivated this burning energy inside of him, and it created a new monster. But what if I told you there's an even bigger story about Giannis than the one I just detailed? What if I told you that Giannis is proving something right now that very few legendary athletes have proven in the past? See, the undeniable truth about Giannis is that he's eagerly waiting to reach another dimension with his legacy. Just over 2 years ago, the Milwaukee Bucks stood on the NBA mountaintop as champions, with their 50-plus year title drought finally being vanquished. 26-year-old Giannis Antetokounmpo was the Finals MVP on a team with 2 other All-Star caliber players in Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton, including an army of above-average role players that had us convinced the Bucks would be in the thick of the race for an NBA championship for years to come. With hopes high and his confidence at the time skyrocketing, Giannis said proudly after winning the title that he was happy he never thought about joining a super team to win a title, and he accomplished his goal the hard way, which is what his ultimate wish was. But just a few months later, when the following NBA season had already begun, Giannis backtracked just a bit on his position with the Milwaukee Bucks by saying that maybe the next challenge in his career might not be here, as in Milwaukee. This raised a specter of doubt among the fans that he may actually think hard one day about leaving the team he just won a championship with. It made sense that Bucks fans were worried when hearing something like that, because decades ago, Bucks fans watched Kareem Abdul-Jabbar win a championship with Milwaukee and ask for a trade just a few seasons later. Was history really on its way to repeating itself again? In December of 2020, Giannis signed a $228 million contract extension, which was the largest extension in NBA history at the time. And by winning the NBA title just 7 months later, the Bucks organization felt that Giannis's extension couldn't have come at a better time. He's here for 4 to 5 more seasons, still super young and happy. But then another scary alarm rang through the Bucks franchise a couple years later because Giannis rejected the opportunity to sign a contract extension with the Bucks because he said it wouldn't make sense for him numbers-wise. And he also made it clear that he's looking to see more commitment in terms of winning from the Bucks franchise. But here's the point the entire world completely missed. It comes back to Giannis's mindset. That winner's mentality, the urge to keep his foot on the gas pedal. Giannis is not satisfied, even as someone who's completely turned a franchise around and won them their first title since the 70s. Giannis didn't want to come out and publicly acknowledge his future in Milwaukee because it's a way for him to keep himself on his toes. He wants to keep himself guessing. He wants the team to stay focused on winning, too. That's why the Bucks went out and got Damian Lillard the second Giannis commented on his future. See, one cliche we all accept as truth is that pressure makes diamonds. With that mental pressure Giannis exerts on himself and the pressure he's putting on the Bucks franchise to not settle for anything but the best is a sign of a true leader. Giannis is a true leader. The Bucks landing on a superstar like Dame is just another sign of the great leadership of number 34. And yeah, last year's loss in the first round to the Miami Heat stirred up some more anti-Giannis narratives, but don't be fooled this time. Giannis knows a thing or two about bouncing back in the right way, and making those who doubt him regret it all. If he goes on and adds some more hardware to his trophy collection in the coming years, he'll move his already Hall of Fame-worthy legacy up several notches and continue making his case against some of the greatest big men in NBA history, like Shaq, Kareem, Duncan, Olajuwon. But actually, the man he's always compared favorably against is Wilt Chamberlain due to his build and scary athleticism. But let me ask you this. If you could pick one player in the NBA today that you think could break Wilt's record for points in a game, who would you pick? Some might actually pick Giannis' teammate, Mr. Lillard, over the guy who just scored 64. But I'm taking Giannis. And that's because, much like Wilt did, Giannis shoots a ton of free throws per game, up to over 11 attempts per game. But if you factor in Giannis' ability to get to the free throw line and his ability to hit a few three-pointers, he'd realistically have a shot to break the record that has stood for over 60 years. Giannis Antetokounmpo is the only player in NBA history to average at least 25 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, 1 block, and a steal in multiple seasons. That's even beyond some of the silly great numbers Wilt put up. Giannis is carving out a legendary resume, and with another ring or two to his name, he'll begin making a serious case for a top 10 player ever.